I'm just going to do an informal video here, and I'm sorry if you guys can hear some of the noise. You might hear a click like once a minute. There's a time lapse going on in this room, and I have some other things that are running in another room. Now, for those of you that watch, it's either one or two videos ago, I had gotten a Pi Pico accessory, and I was talking about taking it with me on a trip in the hopes of being able to put it together. That trip ended up being very busy, and I did not have the opportunity I was looking for to put everything together, but we're going to try and do this now. So pulling everything out of the box here that I'm going to need. It's one other thing that I'm need. Okay, here we go. You set the box down. Yes, this is a very crowded setup. I just have a lot of things that are dumped here. So let's see what I've got in my box here. I have a couple of packages of these FlexyPins. These are going to be used for making temporary connections to these Pi Pico variants that I have. I can't remember what this one was called. I think it might have been something like Stamp XL. I ordered it from somewhere in Europe. What was this called? It's the RP2350 Stamp XL. And then I have the carrier board for the Stamp XL. I'm not going to be doing much with these right now. I am going to get everything soldered together because oh, well, they actually do have the, I'll just show you this. So if you want to follow the QR code, there it is. And I'll put the link on the screen so that you can follow it here. Looks like my soldering iron's hot. Let's turn it down a little bit. What I'm aiming to do here is just primarily solder the FlexyPins. I thought about how I'm going to go about doing this, and so in addition to the FlexyPins, you also have these other optional headers that can be installed. And by my estimate, this will be easier to, it'll be easier to install the FlexyPins if I also have the headers in place. So let's see, we have the headers. They give me a barrel jack for supplying this thing with some power. And then there's some other headers. I see where these go. So these will go here on the end. If I can get it lined up, that is. There we go. So those are going to go on the end. Let's see if I can get these other headers put in place. So my thought is to get the headers put in place first. Once those are in place, then I should be able to turn this upside down and start soldering in the FlexyPins. The FlexyPins look like they're going to be a lot more delicate than the other headers are. And with these headers in place, then when I have this turned upside down, the FlexyPins are not going to be touching the surface on which I have this sitting. And yeah, that should just overall make things easier. Cool, so that's how everything's going to go in here. I'm going to flip this upside down, and some of these are probably going to fall out, which is fine. I think, yep, there goes one now. I just need to start off getting a few of them in here straight. And then once those are solid, I can start getting some others in here straight. Now you're going to hear me get disturbed in a bit because I'm going to be babysitting the dogs of a family member. And they're going to be bringing their dogs over here. It just so happens that they called me just before I started up the camera to tell me that they are on their way. And rather than wait for them to get here, I'm just going to have a disturbance in this video. So let me get my solder in place here. Okay, I've got my solder. I've got the soldering iron. You know, I'm wondering if I can actually do this with thicker solder. I'd like to save my more delicate solder since that is not as plentiful for me. Zoom in a bit. I am not the best at soldering. I'm just going to tell you guys that now. Okay, let's see if I can do this with my larger solder. We will switch to the smaller solder when I'm doing the FlexyPins. Hello? Okay, I'll see you when you get here. Bye. Okay, so that's the person that's coming with the dogs. They wanted to chat. I told them I'm recording so that I can keep going. Okay, this solder doesn't bond well. Let me go ahead and try the other solder. Okay, trying the thin solder here. This should perform differently. Yeah, this actually goes better. Okay. And it looks neater. I have said before, but I am not the best whenever it comes to soldering. Okay, going much faster. I think I can do this with less heat. Let's turn it down a little bit. Okay, I think I got everything connected here. I should make sure that I test these connections later on too. Okay, for the next connector, I'm going to do something that's on the opposite corner. So we are going to be working in this area. Okay, got them on opposite sides now. Do this one next. Okay, before I start doing more, I just want to make sure that these all align. Yes, they do. Okay, take these two out. Do the one next to the display connector. I think that's a display port. It could be micro HDMI. It's either micro HDMI or it's a micro display port. Okay, we just have two more of these to put in place. Okay, so this is the last amongst the female headers. After this, there's one male header, and then I'm going to be down to the FlexyPins themselves. Let's see if I can get this last one done before the dogs arrive. Okay, got those in place. The last two things I really need to solder, and I think I hear the vehicle approaching here. Nope, that's another vehicle. Okay, I'm gonna rest it on this Allen wrench. Okay, cool. That gives me exactly what I need. So now I have enough length so that's pressed all the way up against the circuit board. Okay, so I'm gonna stop here. I need to go out and greet my dogs, and then I will come back and start working on the FlexyPins. I think off camera, I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at how each of these joints looks, go ahead and get it fixed. If I can, see how does this go? Okay, here we go. So off camera, I'll go ahead and examine these joints, fix anything that I think needs to be fixed, and then when we continue, I'll be installing the FlexyPins. I might go ahead and do the barrel jack off camera too, because there's nothing impressive to see about that. So let's stop everything. Francis, hey, how are you doing, huh? Have you been good? Have you been good? Okay, y'all be good. I've got to go finish what I'm doing, and then I'll come spend time with you, okay? Be good. Back to working on this project. Now, I have some of these FlexyPins lined out here so you can see what they look like. And so, yeah, that's basically them. Now, while I was off camera and dealing with Coco and Princess, I did go ahead and I put several, but not all of them in place. So let's take a look at this board so we can see what it looks like. So here's a close-up of the board. You can see that I have FlexyPins on 3 sides of it. So from the underside, all you really see is loops. Let's take a look at the other side though. So on the other side, you might start to get an idea of how this works. So from those loops, you can see that there are the pins that are sticking up. And basically, whenever I put the stamp in there, they're going to get wedged between these pins. And those pins are going to be pressing up against the contacts that are on the side of the circuit board. Now, right now, these are just kind of sitting there. I have not soldered any of them in place yet. I'm not quite sure what the best way to solder them would be. So let's get our soldering iron warmed up. I forgot to turn that off. Now, since we're on camera, I'm going to go ahead and I'll put I did leave some of the board open so that you can get an idea of how these FlexyPins go in. Let's see if I can do this. So I'm taking one and looking on the board, there's like 3 holes right here. I'll give you a close-up. Ah, dang it, I think I just popped a pin out. Yep, I sure did. Okay, I had to make sure I don't apply any pressure to the bottom. So if you look at each one of those pads, you can see that there's 3 holes. The innermost hole, I'm not doing anything with that. The one that's kind of oval shaped, that's where the longer lead of the FlexyPin goes through. And then the shorter one is going to be anchored where the smaller hole is. Let me find a good angle to put this at while I'm putting this in. Okay, we're going to try right here. Hopefully I can keep this in focus while I'm trying to do this. Of course, I'm going to be blocking the light while I'm doing this too. So here's my pin. You can see there's the longer end. So you can see how the longer one in, the shorter one is not. Let me see if I can fix that. Okay, I think I got it lined up. Okay, so once I got it lined up, all I had to do was press it through, and now it is, I've done it wrong. They are both now in the same hole. Okay, let's fix that. Okay, I think I've got it now. Let's take a look. Okay, there it is. So you can see the shorter pin is in the outer hole, the longer one is in the oval shaped. I need to do the same thing for those other pins that are empty. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, my soldering iron's hot now, so let's see if we can get some of these. So the best I can think to do is, since I'm going to be soldering on the outer edge, is I'm going to put the soldering iron against the pin that's on the outer edge and see if I can approach it with solder from the inner edge. Let's just try and do one here. It's hard to get a good grip on this. Here we go. And I think I got it. Yeah, I did get it. So, okay, let's take a look. And there it is. If you look on the right side, you can make out the little solder joint there. So I have to do that, I don't know, what is this, like 48 more times? I'll do a few more on camera, and then I'm going to turn the camera off, primarily because this is using a lot of data storage, and I think I might be running out of memory on the Samsung T7 I have plugged into the camera. And I might have to go find my glasses before I can finish the rest of this. Okay, there's number 2. There's number 3. So let's stop for a second. Let me investigate. Okay, number 1 and number 2 are fine. Number 3, what happened here? It doesn't look like it's connected. Oh, I see what happened. It has some solder melted on the pin, but it's not on the pad. Let me see if I can fix number 3. Okay, number 4. Number 5. Okay, I think this looks okay. And now those are anchored in place. Okay, I'm going to do this to 48 more times, and then I've got some other things to tell you about that's related to this. So let's stop the recording, and I'll continue on after these are all in place. I've gotten the rest of the pins soldered, so this is what's left over. You can see that this is still a lot of pins. I don't think that I'd be able to do another device with these, but it looks like they gave you plenty. Because in addition to these, there's also some more that are now probably permanently lost in my carpet somewhere, because these things are thin, and when you drop them, when they're gone, they're gone. When I ordered this, I actually did get 2 bags of them. It looks like I didn't actually need 2 bags, but I will be able to make use of these because I think I'm going to order another one of these carrier boards, and we'll talk about why in a second. So the board itself, this is it. I've got this Pico variant that's mounted on here, and let me give you a closer look so you can see what's going on. So looking very closely, you might be able to make out that each one of those FlexyPins that's standing up, it is pressed against the contacts that are on the Pico stamp here. So those are pretty firmly held in place. Now, what if I need to remove this? Removing it is easy enough because on the other side of the board, they did leave a hole cut in it. So I can just apply pressure and it falls right out. Getting it back in, it was somewhat tricky. It feels tricky. It's not actually hard. The first thing you have to do is make sure that you have the right alignment. If you look on the corners of the Pico variant, you will see that there are pin numbers on there. And if you look on the corners of where you'd be putting the board on the carrier board, you see that there's numbers on there too. So the first thing to do is just to get the orientation right by just making sure that you have the numbers lined up correctly. But once again, I'm going to point out that if you're visually challenged like I am, these numbers are a bit tiny. But I would say I'm not so much reading the numbers as much as I can kind of make out that which ones have similar shapes. And so I can get the orientation right from there, even though technically I cannot quite read them. So I'm lining this up and making sure that I don't have any pins that are bent underneath here before I press it down. And I don't. And so then I press it down and that's it. It's in place. Now I want to point something else out. You might notice that there's a roll in the middle where I could have put some other FlexyPins. If you saw my other video, then you already know what that's for. If you didn't see my other video, let me show you. Now, while I got the Stamp XL, which is using a Raspberry Pi 2350, let's see, there is another one. So this is another stamp that is also using a 2305. This could be used on a carrier board too. If I had wanted to use this one instead of the other one, see if I can get this lined up. Here we go. Then you can see where the FlexyPins down there would be going. Now I can't wire it to use both, so I decided to wire to use the larger one. And I think I'm going to be getting another carrier board so that I have one that will fit the smaller stamp. Now when you're using these boards, it's not required that you get the carrier board at all, but it's still something that's convenient to have. If you don't get the carrier board at all, for programming, you're going to have to come up with something to solder to the USB pins that are on here. and you could use that. For my purposes, it's just easier to have direct access to the pins. And if you saw my other video, then you know that part of the reason I want access to the pins is because I also have this jumper for the Game Boy, and I'm going to see if I can use a Raspberry Pi Pico in order to dump a card. I mean, I've already got devices for doing that, but it's just kind of fun to see if I can do that myself. I hope you've enjoyed this. This is just a video I decided to do impromptu, and I'll see when I can get a chance to actually start programming on this. And I see the dogs are requesting my attention now, so I need to go take care of them.